Interesting. Interesting part today, guys, with Steve. It's we're in part 4. We shift the focus to the mind-body connection. Steve shares his experience with weight loss. Again, we talk about that in depth, the impact of nutrition on mental health, and the small but powerful changes that helped him rebuild his life. It really is an inspiring conversation, especially when we talk about taking control of your well-being and making sustainable changes. Let's get right into it.
And I think this gets back to the mental health perspective as well, is that, you never know what anyone else is going through. So sometimes, and if I get an odd message or I'll get a comment on a video or something like that, I just sit there and I go, okay, cool. We've all got the right to our opinion. And sometimes I can actually feel the hurt or I can feel the pain that someone has put into a message. And, sometimes I'll just say, hey, look, thanks for your point of view. If there's anything I can ever help out with, just let me know. Right now, most of the time they don't come back and say, yeah, okay, I'm going through a tough spot, because they're on their own journey and it's not for me to detour them or kind of pull them out of their journey, because we've all got to go through our journey. It's just that, the message that I give out there on the podcast, the message I give out there as a mental health first aider is that there is support there. That when you are ready to hear the message, they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, really good points. Do you think I suppose it's when that stimulus, putting that space between the stimulus and the response, for those who can't put that space between the two, I've always thought that's where their brain health is low or their mental health is low. I mean, would you agree with that? If you can put that space, what you did there before was putting that space, responding in a calm way, that would tell me you're mentally clear or have clarity or is brain health is optimal. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the key things is that I've found, and even, you asked me if I have bad days. We all have bad days, right? We all have struggles.
Yeah.
The key thing is that, and it's the old adage of, you get up in the morning, you don't really want to get out of bed, you feel like crap, you kick your toe on the end of the bed and you go, oh, it's going to be a crap day. And you just spiral, right? You go downstairs and, someone's knocked over, the cat's knocked over the vase and something's smashed, and it just, your day just goes worse. And then you go out and, God, the traffic is the worst this morning, and then you go to get a car park and you go, how is there not a car park, right? And you spiral, right?
Yeah.
And then you walk in and someone says to you, oh, have you got that report for me? And you react in a certain way, and you're basically just heading to disaster, right? And I think the key thing is that for anyone that's listening to this, if you're struggling, if you're going in that point and you feel yourself starting to spiral, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Breathe.
Go and jump in cold water.
Go and have a cold shower, or do something that's going to change your mindset, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's about stopping. I think a lot of the time, and I know when I was in my dark places, suicidal ideation, those kind of things, it's about stopping, right? And for me, it's really about gratitude these days, right?
Yeah.
What am I grateful for right now? And that came through life coaching. Tell me 3 things you're grateful for today. If everyone woke up every morning and said, what I need to say 3 things I'm grateful for, it'll change your mindset straight away.
I mean, everything we've just mentioned there, it's neuroplasticity, isn't it? And those little bits where you see the spiral going the car park and something smashed in the house, it's just come to me. It's kind of like micro neuroplasticity, isn't it? Your brain's in the environment which it's seeing. You're training the brain to be negative in those micro moments, and the day just gets worse. You're not seeing the other good things that are happening. You're only seeing the negative. But I've noticed in my life, when I have become grateful and showing gratitude and doing those little things for me in the morning, sets my day up for the rest of the day in a much, much clearer, positive way. Again, neuroplasticity can work for you or it can work against you. But however you look at it, it's happening all day long.
Yeah. It's about changing the reaction, right?
Yeah.
And once you change that reaction and you see the change, next time you can act quicker. You can recover quicker, right? Like if you're putting a fire out, right? The first guy that ever a fire came along and they went, pour some water on it. Oh, actually, the fire starts to go out. Pour a bit more water on it. Oh, the fire goes out. The next time that guy saw a fire, the fire went out quicker.
Well,
Right?
that's resilience,
because he
isn't
knew
it?
what to do.
Well, that's
He knew what to do.
That's building resilience, I suppose. And we talk about building resilience in schools. We can't teach building resilience. You actually have to go through some form of stressful moments, acute, chronic, whatever, to build your resilience. We can't just teach resilience. We can talk about it, but we can't make them resilient because we are talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, it's like exposure. It's like exposure therapy, right? Because, for me, at the end of 2024, I turned 40 in 2024 and my family got me, a skydiving voucher, right? And you probably would have seen this on my social media. But
I did.
After Christmas, I was sitting there and I'm like, my biggest fear in life has always been heights, but also really jumping out of a perfectly good plane, right? Skydiving. I was like, and for many years I was like, I want to do it, but I can't. I was a bit of a chicken. And, just after Christmas, I sat there, I was going through a bit of a struggle and I went, do you know what? I'm going to do it by the end of 2024. I run a podcast that is telling people to push through their discomfort, that there's comfort on the other side of discomfort, and that, if they tackle things that, tackle obstacles, they get better at tackling them, they overcome them, they're no longer obstacles, from a mental health perspective, a physical perspective. So for me, I booked it in, I did it. I used all my optimism, I used all my positivity. And if you watch the video, or if anyone watches the video, you'll see that I was quite optimistic. I walked in and up to the counter, I was like, good morning, how are you? And the lady was like, oh my God, who is this, right? And I went and sat next to a couple that was sitting there. And I said, oh, good morning, how are you? And she's like, yeah, yep. And she says, my partner's usually the most talkative person on the earth, and he hasn't said a word all morning. And she's like, are you okay? And he's like, I don't know if I want to do this, right? And it's interesting, right? Because, it's what you focus on. So I was sitting there and I'd done some research, right? So some of the research is, I think, in America, and I know we're in Australia, but in America, I think it was like the fatality rate is like 1 in 500,000 jumps, right? Like, so really, if I was going to die on that day, it's probably going to be pretty rare, right? And I'd probably be one of the lucky people, right? Not to say that, but unlucky, lucky, 1 in 1,000,000, 1 in 500,000 is a pretty rare stat. So I sat there and I focused on that, and I just focused on being positive and being optimistic, and I did it. Now, when I hit the sand, and I hit the sand quite funny and kind of face planted basically, because I've got my long legs and I'm quite tall, but I'd achieved my biggest fear. Now, the biggest thing about that, Andrew, is that when we achieve things that we once thought was our biggest fear, everything, all the small fears that are under that are insignificant.
Totally. Yeah.
Because when you go to achieve something, say you go to walk on stage, or you're going to do a talk, or you're coming and, you've been asked to be interviewed on another podcast, that's no longer a fear. I jumped out of a plane, right?
Yeah.
Like it's insignificant, right? So everything else just kind of washes away. And mentally, I was, I felt a little bit anxious the other day about something, and I was like, I jumped out of a plane, and I watched my video for about 30 seconds and I went, I'm good. And it changed me. It changed my mindset like that. I recovered quicker and I felt so much better. And then I could move on to what I was doing.
So good. Yeah. I've done a couple of jumps, but it's been so long. Maybe I need to do another jump to refresh that feeling. But you're right. You're so right. I'm going through that right now, actually, with, even though I talk and I do this, I've got no judgment because this is just private between you and I at the moment.
Yeah.
But being in education, every day I speak in front of a lot of people. Sometimes there's a lot of judgment that goes on in education because people come in and they assess you or whatever it may be. But I've also spoken on stage at assemblies and dancing concerts in front of 1,000 people, being an absolute plonker, been an idiot to make the kids laugh. And it's always been the lead up to it that I've felt so sick. And once I'm doing it, I'm actually okay. And then afterwards, you feel amazing, right? And that repeats year after year. And right now, I'm going through it about. I want to do public speaking. I want to go and talk about brain decline, but incorporate the purpose of the podcast into it to help inspire people that are supposed to inspire others. That's kind of my thing. And I'm forcing myself. I was not applying for one, but I've applied, and I'm doing 2 live events in March coming here in Melbourne. And I'm even just talking to you, I'm actually starting to think, oh, fuck, I'm starting to sweat. The thought of it. But I know I will be okay. I know I will be good. But that fear of judgment creeps in here and there. Maybe it's from the bullying because I got judged and I could see the eyes rolling all the time, and that plays into me. And I go, no one wants to hear my shit, right? That's what's in my head. But I do know deep down I'll be okay. Maybe I should jump out of a plane before I do it. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm going through now with the live talks. But I'm forcing myself to do it, and I've just taken a piece of you there for myself. You know, I'm going to force myself to do it, and I will enjoy it. I know I will, but it's just, I suppose, the lead up to it is what gets me. But I'm going to try and embrace the journey a little bit more.
And I think the key thing is, you know, I've done public speaking as well. And, you know, whether it's been at a community event or those kind of things, it gets easier over time. But if you're talking about subject matter that you're passionate about and that's part of your purpose, you can't go wrong.
I know.
Right? If it comes from the heart, right? Like a lot of people, they'll go, oh, I'm stressing about what to say. Well, if it comes from the heart, you can't go wrong.
So true. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm going to take that one with me forever. I think that's perfect. Thanks, Steve.
That's all right.
Going back to you though, with the rock bottom, the period of time that you went through the rock bottom from let's just talk about the 2018. First of all, 2 thoughts. How long were you at rock bottom for, and what were the effects on your mind and body? What did you go through?
Yeah. I've probably had a couple of rock bottoms, and rock bottom probably wasn't in 2018.
Okay.
Rock bottom was probably in 2020. COVID hit.
Yeah.
And obviously the business was very busy, a lot of pressure on my wife, and it was really hard, right? Because I felt very alone, and I was 50 odd kilos heavier than I am today. And I really hit a really dark time. And I remember I couldn't, you know, communicate my feelings. I didn't know what was still going on in my body. And I was really struggling mentally. And I remember I was sitting on the floor of the kitchen after an argument with my wife. And I just was sitting there going, I couldn't control my feelings. I just felt completely, I was rock bottom in the kitchen. And I just couldn't communicate, you know, or I had this kind of, not aggression, you know, I haven't really been an aggressive person, but this real, I just felt like someone had plugged me in, and I just had this electricity and energy running through me that I just couldn't control. And from that point, it was interesting. It was a chance meeting. I met a friend, and I said, oh, you know, you look fantastic. And she said, oh, thank you. And I reached out to her a little bit later, and she said that she'd had the gastric sleeve, so she'd had weight loss surgery. And for me, I've been a yo-yo dieter. I've always been quite, you know, focused on being fit, whether it's running or boot camps, gym, those kind of things. But I couldn't really shift the weight. Or if I did shift the weight, I couldn't shift it for very long. And then it'd come back, and then I'd be on this kind of merry-go-round. And I'm sure a lot of people listening are probably going to relate, because it's what happens, right? Yeah. So I actually made a decision to investigate the good, bad, and the ugly of gastric sleeve surgery. Went and saw the surgeon. I had some flexibility because I wasn't working. And I said to the surgeon, you know, if you get a cancellation earlier, I'll take it. And that was July 2020. I went in, I did my prep work, which was a week or two. And then I went in, had the surgery, and, I'm about 50 odd kilos less than I was back then. I think I lost just over 60 kilos. But when I got to my absolute rock bottom from a weight perspective, I looked quite gaunt and I didn't actually look probably that healthy. But I have put on a little bit more weight. But today I can say I'm probably the fittest I've ever been. I still struggle with the fatigue. But I knew at that point, I was like, I have to get the weight off, because what level of the weight is affecting my confidence, is affecting my fatigue, is affecting my depression, my anxiety, and the way I feel about myself. And if I didn't drop that weight, I probably wasn't going to live, or I wasn't probably going to have much longevity in life. But I couldn't then start working on rebuilding me.
Yeah. And did being overweight, did that cause any other problems with the body as well, with the mind? Did it have any side effects to anything else?
I think being overweight, you're conscious of, like I used to hate going into, get business shirts, because, sizing would be different, and, you'd be like, oh, okay, I'm a double XL or I'm a triple XL or whatever it is. And then you'd go into one store and you'd put the triple XL in and it wouldn't fit. And you'd go, oh, 4XL, right? And you'd put a 4XL on and it'd play with your mind. And, when you're overweight, there's lots of things that, change, your sex life, how you feel about yourself, how your confidence, standing up in front of crowds or taking on certain challenges. One of the key things for me was probably, we went on a family holiday and I went to get into a roller coaster, and the thing came down and it wouldn't lock in. So I couldn't be on the ride with my son.
Oh, so you had to get off.
So I had to get off.
Oh, man.
Right.
Heartbreaking.
And, it's like, when you sit on an aeroplane, right? And, like I'm quite tall, right? So I wasn't, very wide, but, if someone jumps onto my Instagram profile and has a look, they'll see what I was like and kind of what they're seeing now. But, it still was uncomfortable, right? And, I never needed an expander belt on the plane or anything like that, but it just wasn't very comfortable. So there's a lot of things now that are so much better. And that takes away some of the anxiety as well, because back then I probably had some anxiety around my weight, how I looked, how I felt, and what I could actually do and what I couldn't. So sometimes I would go, I wouldn't go and jump in a waterfall or swim without a shirt on. Now I will, right? Because, I've learned to love myself and I am who I am, and that's me.
Amazing. Through the depression, when I went through depression, I was, I went to see the doctor and things were given to me to take. Was that the same for you when you went through your depression? Did you use, I don't know, antidepressants? Did you take anything like that? How quickly did you start to do the other things like cold showers and bring some of those habits into your life? Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.